Hello and welcome to the 12th NHL Draft recap for the 2020 NHL Draft here at Scouching. Now today we're looking at the Philadelphia Flyers, and they had a pretty quiet day, but I think per pick they were pretty efficient. At 23rd overall, they led the way with taking Tyson Forster. Now I've heard that Tyson Forster's really worked on his skating over the course of this summer, and his skating wasn't particularly bad last year either. I thought he was agile on his edges, he covered a lot of ice pretty effectively through his turns, but his straight line skating did need some work, and I felt that his defensive work rate really wasn't where I wanted it to be. He's got a heck of a shot, especially for a power play weapon, and he's a creative playmaker at 5-on-5 as well. I think he was a player that I wouldn't have touched in the first round, but I can understand the argument for why he would go earlier. I really like Tyson Forster's overall projectability as a scoring winger, but overall as an impact player at both ends, I just don't see it right now. So I think the Flyers got themselves a complimentary scorer here down the line for their middle six, with power play upside with the shot that he has demonstrated time and time again. At 54th overall, they went with Emile Andre. Now, I'll say this about Emile Andre. When I tracked him mostly, he was playing with Anton Johannesson for a couple of the games, and a couple of games were away from Anton Johannesson. And every single game I tracked of Anton Johannesson was played with Emile Andre. I get the feeling that Anton Johannesson made Emile Andre look a lot better. Andre was a much less active passer. He was a much less active player in transitions. He wasn't actually as effective at shutting down defensive transitions as Anton Johannesson was, interestingly enough. But one advantage he did have was that he can push up in the offensive zone and try to push offense on his own stick a little bit better than Anton Johannesson could. Johannesson was really excellent at walking that blue line and putting pucks in front of the net through his passing, but Emile Andre was more than willing to step up deeper into the offensive zone and try to push offense that way. I don't really know how well Emile Andre's game will project. I'm more and more on the skeptical side the more and more I saw him this year, but I really think that at 54th overall it was a perfectly reasonable swing to take, especially if he can grow an inch or two over the next couple of years and fill out his frame a little bit. He's a player who plays physically but doesn't really have the size to do so against bigger players, so we'll see how that changes. I think it can change for the better, but I'm really curious to see how he develops over the next little while. At 94th overall, something happened that I frankly kind of expected, where Zack Wisdom actually went off the board before Martin Chromiak did. Zack Wisdom is a fantastic story that you absolutely should go look at. It's been profiled numerous times at multiple publications. He's an extremely hard-working player on the ice, so it seems to translate to the ice surface. I really liked him as a player that freed up the puck for really talented line mates like Shane Wright, and I guess Martin Chromiak as well. But overall, Zack Wisdom is a hard-working player that you just really admire to watch play. He has some good offensive skill and offensive talent as well to him, but this is a player that is going to be a rambunctious force all around the ice. I think this is a player that in the third round will work his way to the peak of his potential ability. Maybe there's a role for him as a bottom six energy player for the Flyers one day, and I think he's a great fit in this program for the types of players the Flyers are looking at. At 135, the Philadelphia Flyers took Elliot Desnoyers, a player from now the Halifax Mooseheads, but at the time was playing for the Moncton Wildcats. Now I've gone back and watched tape of Desnoyers since the draft, and I think there's an interesting skilled forward here, but I didn't really see much of a needle mover. The data I have on him so far indicates him as a net negative offensive and defensive player for the Moncton Wildcats, and I think that he has taken a step in his game now that he has a bigger role with Halifax, and I guess we'll have to wait and see over the next couple of seasons how his game evolves. But I think this is another player where you're kind of betting on that offensive creativity and skill to just become more and more prevalent over the next little while. Now, he wouldn't have been my guy at 135. I think there were some good players that went off the board soon after him, like Pavel Novak or even Ryan Francis out of Cape Breton, that I think were bigger needle movers that I would have taken a swing on. But I guess it's 135. You can't be too upset about who they take. He's taken a step in his game this year, and we'll see what happens over the next 2 seasons when he has a big role in Halifax. And to me, at 178, the Flyers took the one guy on the board who was just slipping all throughout the day, in Connor McLennan from the Winnipeg Ice. I have seen Connor McLennan play quite a few times. I can absolutely see how in bantam hockey he was an absolutely lights-out hockey player, but I just have a lot of questions about how his game projects. I didn't find him particularly effective outside of deep in the offensive zone. His pace, his speed, his skating, it's all just not really at the same level that you need for a small, skilled, elite offensive winger like he portrays himself as. He generated a lot on the power play. He does show a tremendous amount of skill when he's playing with control of the puck and in a situation he's comfortable with, but he's not a very effective defensive player. He allowed tremendous amounts of dangerous shot attempts against with himself on the ice, and I just have a lot of questions with how his game projects. Could it work out? Certainly, and I think at 178, it's a perfectly fine swing to take. There's some interesting fundamental tools here, and he can certainly embarrass a defender or two along the way. I just came away thinking that he was one of the more inactive players that I tracked all season long, and I didn't really see a ton of potential for growth in that area without significant speed and strength improvements. So I guess that's a big reason why he fell all the way to 178. So for the Philadelphia Flyers overall, I'm giving them a 2C. I think they aimed a little low with the first round pick, but I think they did take an interesting swing at 54, landing Emile Andre. I like Zack Wisdom just fine, but Denoyer and McLaughlin might be interesting swings, especially considering where they were picked, but I felt there were some higher upside players that were not only available in those slots, but that went completely undrafted in this year's draft anyway. I think overall they did just fine, and at least Tyson Forster should become a complementary scorer, especially as a power play weapon, but that's perfectly fine, considering they landed what might be a great bottom six energy winger in a guy like Zack Wisdom. So that's all for the Philadelphia Flyers recap for 2020. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking join below. You'll get access to a Discord server, drafted and undrafted prospect sheets for hundreds of players, merchandise discounts, and lots of other goodies. Or you can pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and we'll see you in the next one where we look at the Pittsburgh Penguins.